The man took one bite of the steaming hot dog and collapsed. It wasn't food poisoning. It wasn't choking. It was something far darker. By the time the EMS arrived, it was already too late. His heart had stopped. The hot dog, purchased from a sidewalk cart in Bangkok, Thailand, a city famous for its street food, and infamous for what this one cart was hiding. This wasn't an isolated incident. Across the world, in places you'd never expect, hot dogs, America's most iconic fast food, are turning deadly, deceptive, and in some cases, outright criminal. From tourist traps and secret mafia fronts to chemical-laced sausages sold on government property. Here are the 6 places you should never eat a hot dog and the disturbing reasons why. 1. Bangkok's counterfeit meat cartels. The Bangkok incident shocked international travelers. But beneath the surface, authorities had already been investigating a growing problem. Counterfeit meat syndicates operating in Thailand's unregulated food markets. In 2023, Thai police raided a cold storage warehouse in the Samut Sakhon province. Inside, over 24 tons of expired pork, some dating back more than 7 years, relabeled, soaked in red dye and distributed to food carts across Bangkok. Many of these meats were ground up and stuffed into casings to make cheap hot dogs sold to tourists near popular nightlife districts. An undercover expose by Channel News Asia found that some vendors weren't even using pork, they were mixing rat meat and chemical fillers to simulate sausage texture. One particularly damning report showed sodium borate, a banned preservative, being added to enhance elasticity and color. Why? Because hot dogs are the perfect disguise, heavily seasoned, tightly packed, and eaten quickly. Tourists rarely question what's inside. After the 2023 warehouse raid in Samut Sakhon, Thai media started digging deeper, and what they found was chilling. The counterfeit meat network wasn't just shady, it was part of a transnational food crime ring operating under the radar for more than a decade. It turns out rogue meat factories in Vietnam and Cambodia were exporting spoiled and sometimes diseased animal parts into Thailand, where they were processed and flavored into sausages and frankfurters. The cart where the tourists collapsed, it was traced back to one of these factories. Further investigations revealed that entire pig carcasses rejected by veterinary authorities, including those showing signs of swine fever and tumors, were being ground down and shipped in ice-free containers. A whistleblower who worked in one such facility confessed anonymously to the Thai press. "We spray perfume on the meat so the smell doesn't scare biters. We'd only need it to look and taste okay for 10 minutes, enough to sell." Even more disturbing was the discovery that some of these counterfeit hot dogs were being re-exported and ending up on supermarket shelves in nearby countries like Laos, Malaysia, and even parts of Australia under false packaging labels. The labeling scam extended to expiration dates, making toxic meat look freshly made. In Bangkok's back alleys, a hot dog isn't food, it's a time bomb wrapped in a bun. 2. Times Square, New York. Mafia-controlled food carts. You'd think one of the most famous tourist destinations in the world would have clean, regulated street food. But Times Square's hot dog scene has a murky underbelly. In 2018, a confidential NYPD investigation later leaked to the public revealed that several food cart vendors in Midtown Manhattan were being used to launder money for organized crime families, including the Gambino and Lucchese syndicates. One cart vendor, located just off 7th Avenue, was recorded delivering over $40,000 in untraceable cash to an off-site storage locker every week. Even worse, the hot dogs themselves were being supplied by underground distributors who stored meats in unrefrigerated basements throughout Queens. Lab tests from one sting operation revealed traces of Listeria, E. coli, and dangerously high levels of sodium nitrite, a chemical linked to cancer in processed meats. The NYC Department of Health issues thousands of violations every year, but the problem persists. Why? Because the carts change owners every few months, a shell game that keeps authorities one step behind. While the mafia's involvement in food vending sounds like something out of a movie, insiders say it's become one of the easiest ways to move untaxed cash and illicit goods in plain sight. In the summer of 2022, a former city inspector, now retired, agreed to speak with Vice under a pseudonym. He described a hot dog mafia circuit that operates like clockwork. Illegal cart leases are sold under the table for up to $25,000 a season, even though NYC limits permits and caps the cost. Many owners aren't even the ones operating the carts, they lease them to immigrants under harsh, exploitative terms, offering no food safety training and threatening deportation if they speak up. The sausages. They'd often come from untraceable distributors in Brooklyn and the Bronx who operate out of shuttered storefronts by night. Because the meats are soaked in brine and cooked in steam, spoiled ingredients are nearly impossible to detect until they're already consumed. NYPD surveillance once caught a cart worker washing dirty sausages with bleach and rewashing them in sink water. Another was seen boiling hot dogs in reused mop buckets. These aren't urban legends, these are documented photos from NYPD sting operations. But perhaps the most terrifying element: none of these violations are visible to a customer. On the surface, the cart gleams, the umbrella says Sagret. The worker smiles. And then you take a bite. 3. Baseball stadiums, the illusion of tradition. The crack of the bat, the roar of the crowd, and of course the $12 ballpark hot dog. But behind the nostalgia lies one of the dirtiest secrets in American sports venues. In 2022, ESPN conducted an undercover health inspection sweep of 30 major league stadiums. The results were horrifying. Over 70% failed to meet basic food safety standards, with hot dog stands ranking as the worst offenders. At one stadium, inspectors found hot dogs being stored next to leaking chemical containers. At another, sausages were found swimming in lukewarm water at 82 degrees Fahrenheit, a bacterial breeding ground. Why don't fans get sick more often? They do, with mild symptoms like nausea, vomiting, or diarrhea rarely reported or connected back to the stadium. Most people just blame it on alcohol or heat. Stadiums count on that. Even more disturbing, some teams outsource concessions to third-party vendors with no accountability to the teams or fans. And yes, some of those vendors have previous violations for reusing expired meat. America's pastime has a bacteria problem. When ESPN published their expose on stadium food, fans were shocked, but insiders weren't. One former stadium food manager, speaking anonymously, described a system riddled with shortcuts, oversights, and hidden infractions. During doubleheaders or weather delays, vendors often have limited refrigeration and no access to proper disposal sites. What do? Reheat, reuse, and reserve. Sausages that sit out for hours in the afternoon game are often steamed again for the night crowd. And then there's the equipment. The iconic roller grills used in thousands of concessions are nearly impossible to clean fully. One investigative journalist found weeks-old grease and burnt meat residue caked inside machines at a California stadium, breeding bacteria with every revolution of the rollers. A health department report in 2021 cited a major stadium for using expired mustard packets, storing hot dogs in plastic bins on the ground, and operating prep counters covered in rat droppings. The vendor? Still contracted for another 5 years due to a long-standing exclusive deal. Even more astonishing is the profit motive. A stadium hot dog that costs $0.38 to make is sold to fans for $9 to $13, depending on the city. That's a profit margin of over 2,000%, creating zero incentive for teams or contractors to upgrade food safety systems. You're paying more than ever for hot dogs that could make you sick. 4. School lunchrooms. The government's pink slime loophole. When the USDA approved the use of lean, finely textured beef, LFTB, in public school lunches back in the early 2000s, they were hoping to reduce costs and minimize waste. But what they really did was open the door to one of the most controversial food scandals in American history, one that's still haunting hot dogs served to millions of children every year. LFTB, better known as pink slime, is a byproduct of meat trimmings treated with ammonia gas to kill bacteria, then spun into a paste and used as a filler in cheap meats, especially hot dogs and burgers. After public outrage in 2012, many companies pulled back from using it. But under current USDA regulations, pink slime is still legal in school lunches and doesn't have to be labeled. In 2021, a whistleblower from a meat processing plant in Iowa revealed that over 60% of the hot dogs sent to public schools were made with more than 50% pink slime. Kids are essentially eating ammonia-washed meat paste, disguised as hot dogs. When parents complain, school districts say they're bound by budget constraints. But make no mistake, this is not nutrition. It's a legal loophole serving chemical meat to our youngest generation. It's easy to forget, but public schools serve more hot dogs per year than almost any commercial chain, especially during budget crunches. In rural districts, they're sometimes served 3 to 4 times a week. One food worker in Missouri reported that their cafeteria received pre-cooked meat logs that were ground down and recased on site to save money. She described the texture as slimy and pink, even after cooking. But perhaps the most shocking revelation came from internal USDA memos leaked in 2022, showing that certain meat blends used for hot dogs in schools had been rejected for military use due to texture and contamination concerns, but were still greenlit for student meals. Parents often assume that school food is heavily regulated, but a deeper look shows a confusing tangle of waivers, exemptions, and outdated inspection systems. Most school kitchens only receive one unannounced inspection per year, and some are exempt if they have low-risk menus, which hot dogs, bizarrely, are categorized as. And what about allergy and dietary disclosures? According to a CDC review, over 34% of public schools in the U.S. failed to properly disclose processed meat allergens, including soy fillers and artificial binders. This means children with known sensitivities may unknowingly ingest chemical-laced hot dogs every week. The consequences are real and so far completely legal. 5. Gas stations in rural America. The forgotten outposts. Pull over at a dusty gas station in rural Mississippi or Arizona, and you might see them spinning shiny, glistening, unnaturally plump hot dogs rotating under heat lamps. Some of them haven't moved in 12 hours. Others, not even meat at all. In 2020, a viral TikTok video showed a gas station clerk in Oklahoma peeling mold off hot dogs and recasing them for the next day's sales. It sparked national outrage, but also opened the floodgates. More customers began sharing their own horror stories. Hot dogs with plastic still inside, hot dogs oozing a green liquid when bitten, and meat that smelled suspiciously like cat food. The FDA rarely inspects gas station food. In fact, food safety is usually managed by local health departments, many of which are underfunded and understaffed in remote counties. Some stations buy meats from unlicensed wholesalers to keep prices low. The scariest part: a study from the University of Kansas found that over 20% of hot dogs sold in rural gas stations contain bacteria resistant to antibiotics, meaning if you get sick, modern medicine might not be able to save you. The gas station convenience store industry has become a $237 billion juggernaut, and food is its fastest-growing category. But behind the counter, there's chaos. One industry consultant admitted that most store managers aren't trained in food safety, and many don't even know the proper holding temperature for sausages. In one infamous 2023 case, a Utah man was hospitalized after eating a gas station hot dog that had tested positive for Salmonella and Clostridium perfringens, a bacteria that causes severe abdominal illness. His case sparked a brief federal review, which found that 12 states do not require hot food monitoring logs at gas stations at all. In other words, no one is checking if the food is hot, fresh, or safe. Another critical issue is how hot dogs are stored before they hit the rollers. One regional chain was caught keeping their bulk meats in outside sheds without refrigeration, exposed to wild temperature swings and rodent activity. By the time the hot dogs reached the customer, they had been frozen, thawed, and refrozen up to 4 times, a bacterial nightmare. And yet, convenience stores now serve over 50 million hot dogs per year, often to truck drivers, travelers, and late-night workers who have no other food options. It's a silent epidemic hiding in plain sight. 6. Carnivals and state fairs, a recipe for disaster. The smell of funnel cake, the flashing lights of the Ferris wheel, and the sight of foot-long hot dogs drenched in mustard. It's American in its purest form. But beneath the joy and sugar highs, carnivals are one of the least regulated food environments in the country. Mobile food vendors at state fairs operate under temporary licenses, often valid for just 3 to 10 days. That means they're rarely inspected, and when they are, violations are overlooked due to time constraints. In 2019, an investigation by NBC News found that 1 in 4 hot dog stands at state fairs in Texas, Ohio, and Kentucky had serious health violations, including using unwashed cutting boards, storing meat in coolers with melted ice, and operating with no hand washing station at all. Even worse, many carnival vendors use bottom-tier meat suppliers, importing the cheapest hot dogs available from outside the U.S., where production standards are even lower. One case in 2018 linked an outbreak of trichinosis, a parasite found in undercooked meat, to a hot dog stand at the Georgia State Fair. The tragedy? These events cater to families with children, where food safety should be non-negotiable. But the carnival atmosphere distracts from hygiene, and no one asks questions until it's too late. Hot dogs were once a symbol of Americana, grilled on July 4th, passed around stadiums, celebrated on menus from Coney Island to Costco. But today they're also a convenient mask for corruption, contamination, and criminal exploitation. Why hot dogs? Because they're cheap to make. easy to sell, and almost impossible to inspect once cooked. They're not the problem, where and how they're made is. The next time you're offered one on the street, at a carnival, or even a public school lunch tray, you might want to think twice. 6 places. 1 lesson. What seems harmless could be hiding a history of disease, deception, and danger. This isn't about hating hot dogs. It's about knowing where not to trust them, because when safety slips through the cracks, it's the everyday consumer who pays the price. So go ahead. Fire up the grill at home. Enjoy the tradition, but in these 6 places. Put the hot dog down.